Story 1. The Basement. My name is Brian. A few years ago I worked not far from my home at a carpet manufacturing company. I always walked to work. It took me about 10 minutes. My apartment building had an old basement. You couldn't get in. It was locked. When I left the house, I often heard strange sound coming from the basement, either pipes creaking or rails scratching. Those sounds were creepy and unpleasant, especially in the evening. If I had been a kid, maybe that place would have been my favorite spot with my friends. Every teenager loved creepy places. Our basement was no exception, and kids often played near it pretending a monster lived there. They would scare each other and run away. It wasn't funny to me. They screamed loudly under my window, and it irritated me. I hated the basement. Honestly, I hated the whole neighborhood and city back then. I wanted a different life, but at the time I couldn't change it. One day, I was coming down from the second floor and saw two men in uniforms, probably electricians. I went outside and for the first time saw the basement door open. It was pitch black inside. It seemed the two workers had been talking about how the light in the basement wasn't working and they couldn't fix it. I stopped. I was very curious what was inside. I peered into the darkness but couldn't see anything. Still just looking at it gave me a strange feeling of unease. I decided to hurry to work. I wouldn't want to go down into the creepy basement, I thought. But soon I forgot about it. That evening, when I came home, I noticed the basement door was still open. I stopped again and decided to look inside. It was even darker than in the morning. I stood there, staring into the darkness. It was like the basement was hypnotizing me. I felt this urge to test myself. Could I actually go down there into the dark? Like some inner child woke up inside me. But it was just a fleeting thought and I simply went home. An hour later, it started to rain. It was very dark outside. Lightning flashed now and then. I usually like rain, but that night it made me uneasy. I put on my jacket and left my apartment to stand by the basement. One more time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not crazy. Maybe I was just bored, because my life felt so empty. I hated the endless Groundhog Day. I wanted something new, some kind of change. That basement sparked that feeling. I'd only ever seen it locked before. So there I was, standing at night, in the rain, by that creepy basement, deciding to go down, at least a little, to feel that familiar smell from childhood. I stepped down a few stairs and thought, this isn't so scary. Then I went a bit lower and suddenly the door slammed shut. Damn. I immediately ran back up and tripped in the darkness. I fell right on the stairs and hit my forehead. I turned on flashlight on my phone and shone it around, making sure I was alone. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. I didn't know what to do. The first thought that came to me was to go deeper into the basement. Maybe there was another exit. I walked down the dark corridor constantly, hearing noises suggesting I wasn't alone. Rats scurried across the floor and along the pipes, hiding from me. I disturbed their peace. I reached the end of the basement and saw no way out. But then I noticed a door slightly ajar, with light coming from inside. Was someone in there, or had that light always been on? I was more afraid that the first option was true. I slowly walked toward the door, trying not to make a sound, because there was nowhere to run. I peeked through the crack. There was a man lying inside, looking like a homeless person. He seemed to have his own little room there, with a dirty old mattress and lots of trash. He was asleep and didn't see me. My stomach tightened. I started sweating. What if he woke up? Where would I go? I stepped back and accidentally stepped on a plastic bag. Damn! The man keeps sleeping. I turned around and slowly walked toward the exit. I got to the door and tried opening it again, more quietly this time so he wouldn't wake up. I tried everything I could, but it wouldn't open. And then it sounded like I heard footsteps outside. Had someone locked me in? I couldn't even call out for help. I didn't want to wake up the homeless man. I really didn't want to meet him. I pushed on the door one more time and froze. It felt like someone was standing right behind me. A horrible feeling. I slowly turned, and in the light of my flashlight, there he was. The creepy homeless man stood there, staring at me. He took a step toward me, and in fear, I dropped my phone. I started banging on the door, yelling for help. Open up! He's coming after me! Yeah, now it sounds like a comedy. The door opened, and it turned out the neighborhood kids had decided to play a prank on me. They had locked me in, and the homeless man wasn't going to harm me. His name was Alfred, and apparently everyone but me knew he sometimes stayed there and kept an eye on the basement. That's how I became the biggest fool in the neighborhood. Story 2. She predicted the rain. My name is Alex. I've been married to my beloved wife for 10 years now. We have a son, and soon our daughter will be born. Life is going well for us, but we also have a story we both could forget. The scariest day of our lives. It happened when we were both 10 years old. Emma and I have known each other practically since birth. Our families were always neighbors and good friends. There was no way Emma and I wouldn't become best friends. We lived in a small town and our houses were very close to the forest. It was great. Emma, me and a few of our friends constantly played in the woods or went to the pond. Every weekend we'd gather and go exploring. Of course, Emma and I have a special bond. Every Saturday morning, either she or I would come to the other's house, and only then we'd go pick up the rest of the group. We were like brother and sister, but that day was different. Our friend Michael had gone missing. Friday evening, he was walking home from school, but nobody saw him after that. The police and the whole town were looking for him. Of course, Emma and I were among the first to volunteer, but our parents wouldn't let us. They were afraid we'd disappear too. No one knew what had happened to Michael. Maybe he'd been kidnapped or got lost, but we just couldn't sit still. We had no idea how to search or where to go. But I distinctly remember a car parked on the roadside right across from us. It was a red sedan, but I don't remember the make. I only noticed it because there was a man behind the wheel staring right at us. I was afraid. He was one of the volunteers and would tell our parents we'd run away. I suggested to Emma that we start by checking the pond where we often played. And I'll never forget her words. Do you smell it? Rain's coming. I don't know how she did it, but she could always smell when rain was about to start. And that day, she was right. It began running. We ran through the woods. We did not want to waste a single minute. Michael might need our help. The rain got heavier by the second. Thunder rumbled. We reached the pond and checked all our secret spots. Michael wasn't anywhere to be found. We walked around until Emma noticed something floating in the water. It was one of Michael's shoes. Emma immediately ran into the water and swam toward it. I didn't know what to do. I was a terrible swimmer and afraid of deep water. It was getting dark fast, and we didn't even have flashlights. My phone didn't even have one. I turned the screen so Emma could see where I was from the water. She reached the shoe and dove under. Nothing. She dove again and again. It seemed like she was getting tired. I could barely see her. She dove one more time, and at that moment, time froze for me. Emma didn't come back up. I started shouting, thought I knew it was pointless. Horrible images flashed through my mind. I thought Emma had drowned. I forgot all about my fear of deep water and clumsily swam toward the shoe. Water going in my eyes, and the rain was so heavy I couldn't even tell where I was anymore. I tried to feel the bottom with my feet, but slipped underwater. I struggled to stay afloat, waving my arms and kicking my legs, but I knew for sure I was sinking. Panic took over me, and then, just as I was about to go under completely, Emma appeared. She saved my life. She was such a strong swimmer that she pulled us both to shore. I'll never forget that moment, and I always be grateful to her, and she knows I do anything for her too. We were soaking wet, and the rain no longer bothered us, but we still hadn't found Michael, and it was already dark outside. Then I noticed a flashlight beam among the trees and suggested we hide. I thought our parents would scold us. I figured it was volunteers. We hid behind some trees and watched the beach. It was the man from the red car. I told Emma to stay quiet and still. Was he following us? I immediately thought that man kidnapped Michael. Then he shone his flashlight in our direction and said, "Kids shouldn't be walking in the forest at night." I shouted, "Run!" We ran through the forest, branches scratching us. I held Emma's hand tight. I was more afraid for her than for myself. I was ready to distract the man so she could escape. We ran in the dark, hearing his flashlight beam chasing us. We burst out onto the road by the bus stop, where the red car was parked. There were lots of people around now. None of them even looked at us. They were all staring at Michael. He was alive. The man with the flashlight came out of the forest and asked why we'd run from him. Turns out he was the detective. He was the one who found Michael in the forest. My childish mind had imagined a scary kidnapper. The detective gave us a blanket and poured us hot tea from his thermos. Our parents wanted to scold us, but the detective stood up for us. He said we were true friends with good hearts, but told us never to run away from home again. Later, we learned Michael had argued with his parents and run away to the pond. He'd thrown his shoes and backpack in the water. He got in trouble for that, but he deserved it. That day, Emma and I imprinted on our memories forever, because that was the day we truly realized how much we meant to each other. Story 3. Lauren's Story. Hi everyone, I'm the author of this channel. This story was told to me by my grandmother. It's not made up, it really happened long before I was born. Enjoy. It was 1978. I had just married the most handsome guy in our little town, your grandfather. I remember it like it was yesterday. His parents gave us an old house on a small farm as a wedding gift. The house had come to them as an inheritance from some distant relative. I couldn't believe we'd be living together so soon. But apparently God blessed our marriage and gave us a home. We packed our things and drove out to the countryside. The house was in a very scenic but lonely place. It was the first time we saw it in person. I didn't expect a palace, of course, but I also hadn't expected to be so run down. Jeremy hugged me and said that together we'd fix it up, get a dog, have kids, and become a real family. I had no doubts. I believed in him. But before that, we had to go through something terrifying. When I entered the house, I noticed a very strange smell. Something rotten, spoiled, like something had died in there. Maybe an animal, maybe rats, I didn't know. What was strangest was that the house was dusty, but there were almost no cobwebs, as if someone had been living there recently. There were dirty dishes on the table, tin cans, lots of bottles. I knew for sure the house had been abandoned for about 10 years. Only after its owner passed did it come to us. But it felt like someone had been here just a couple of weeks ago. We sat our backs down by the door. Inside was filthy, so we decided to at least clean up part of the house to make a space to spend the night. There was electricity, we just had to turn on the breaker. Jeremy went outside to do that, while I stayed in and started cleaning trash off the floor. It was getting dark fast and rain began. I looked out the window. Storm clouds gathered. Jeremy still hadn't come back. I decided to go look for him, but when I go to the breaker box outside, he wasn't there. I flipped the power on myself and went back inside. Something about the place made me uneasy. The wind slammed the door shut. The dim light from a single bulb filled the living room. What worried me most was that Jeremy was still missing. There were no cell phones back then. I couldn't just call him. I tried to distract myself and keep cleaning. Soon the garbage bags were full, but Jeremy still wasn't back. I looked out the window. Raindrops drummed against the glass. Lightning flashed. I'd never felt so lonely, as if everyone had vanished and it was just me and this house. Then I saw him, my husband, in the woods. I ran out to him. "What are you doing out there? Why aren't you coming inside?" He was soaking wet. He could have caught a cold. We came back inside and I asked him again what he'd been doing. At first he didn't want to tell me, but eventually he admitted he'd seen a man in the woods watching us. Jeremy had noticed him when we first drove in, and then again in the trees. He tried to catch up to him, but the man vanished. He said the man looked about 50, bowed, dressed in old-torn clothes. But the strangest thing, he looked familiar somehow, like Jeremy had seen him before. Jeremy was freezing. I gave him a towel and unpacked our kettle, but I quickly realized it wouldn't work. The stove was an old gas one. The house was getting cold. We had to figure out a way to stay warm. I noticed a pile of firewood near the fireplace and decided to light a fire. I just hoped the chimney wasn't clogged, otherwise we'd have to sleep in the car. I lit the fire and we sat by it. There was still trash and dust all around, but the warmth and glow of the fire gave us a sense of calm. We sat there, cuddled up, for an hour. One of the coziest moments of our lives. But then a loud crash outside interrupted us, like something had fallen. Jeremy went out to check, maybe just the wind. He came back and said a ladder had fallen over behind the house. Just then, lightning flashed and thunder boomed. The lights went out. Only our source of light now was the fireplace. That's when strange things started happening. Dust fell from the ceiling. I went upstairs while Jeremy unpacked our bedding. I wanted to see if we could sleep in one of the bedrooms. I walked into the room that would later become your dad's. It smelled of mold and was dirty, but the bed was made with a sheet, pillow, and blanket. For a moment I thought, what if someone's already sleeping here? Turns out I was right to think that. I went back down and told my husband we'd have to sleep by the fire or in the car. We chose the floor by the fireplace. Alright then, I said, I'll make us dinner. I turned toward the door and looked out the window. There was a man in the woods. He was looking straight into my eyes. I froze speechless. Jeremy asked what was wrong and I just pointed, slipped back into the trees. I had completely forgotten about him. Jeremy locked the door, but the windows were still open. I covered them with blankets and towels. It made me feel safer. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Then another noise, this time from the attic. I went upstairs again and heard a creak. I froze. Who is there? No answer. Jeremy came up and asked what I was doing. I said I heard something. It was darker in the hallway than in the rooms, only outlines of walls and doors. Jeremy lit his lighter. I noticed old photos of previous owners on the walls. We walked further, and then, on one photo, I saw the bald man. It couldn't be. He'd been watching us. The photo showed him just much younger, maybe 30 years earlier. Who was he? Then we heard footsteps. One of the bedroom doors creaked open, and I saw a man's hand. The lighter went out. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it. The lighter wouldn't light again. We heard the steps coming closer. Suddenly, the lighter sparked, and there he was, standing in front of us. His eyes were lifeless, and he looked like a homeless man. We were terrified, but only for a few seconds. Jeremy recognized him. It was Uncle Aaron, the one everyone thought was dead. No, he wasn't a ghost. Thought at first I thought he was. It really was Aaron, alive. We later learned he'd gone missing years ago, and most of the family had stopped looking. The police said he was probably dead. And who was the bald man? An old friend of Aaron's, the only one who knew he was still alive and helped him survive despite his dementia. Soon after that, Uncle Aaron was moved into a care home, and we decided to visit him every week because he had no one else. It was our duty. A few years later, Aaron passed away, and only then did we finally move into that house.